You know, Superman's not the only one who can fly and be a hero. Find out how you can in this episode of In the Hangar. Hello and welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Dan Milliken. One of the biggest joys that you can have having that pilot certificate is being able to help other people, whether it's flying patients for angel flights or helping out with rescued pets for Pilot and Paws, Challenge Air. There's so many, but one of the biggest is Operation Airdrop. Joining us today is Russ Keith and Larry Robichaud. Thank you so much from Operation Airdrop. Now, I've had you guys on before in actually different capacities. Russ, you've been on as far as airplanes and coffee. You've been a key part of that. Now, here you are, branded Operation Airdrop. What's going on?
So, back in November, I assumed the position of the executive director for Operation Airdrop. So I took over the day-to-day operations.
All right, so Operation Airdrop, the biggest news, of course, has been Helene and what went on in the Carolinas.
Right.
When that hurricane came up through Florida, Florida was ready. They're used to that kind of stuff. But what happened is there was a low-pressure system that basically stalled Helene right over the Carolinas, where there were places up in the hills and the mountains where bridges were washed out and roads were washed out, and now people could not access supplies and everything else. So talk about what happened in the Carolinas.
Well, Helene was just very simply, it was just like Harvey when it hit. It was supposed to go through,
Right.
and it stopped.
And it stopped.
And it just kept raining, kept raining, kept raining. And streams that were normally 30 feet wide and 2 feet deep became 300 feet wide and 20 feet deep, destroying whole towns. We thought it was going to be a quick rain and wind event, and when it started developing, we knew we were going to have to go. We were prepared to go, but we didn't know how bad it was going to be until it really happened.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, not funny, but as these different emergencies are on the radar, I mean, you know about a week, 2 weeks before something like Helene's coming, you know that you're going to have to spin up Operation Airdrop, but you're thinking it's just going to be another kind of a hurricane where you go in for a few days or whatever, and by then FEMA's in or whatnot.
Right.
But in the case of Harvey, which kicked this whole thing off, and Helene, it became something much bigger. But let's go back to Harvey and the start of what happened and how Operation Airdrop came into being with Harvey.
Well, you've had Doug Jackson on, who was our founder, and Doug was hauling goods down to Port Aransas on a truck. He owned a trailer company at the time, and he could only haul so much, and got down there. The roads were open. Then he started getting calls saying, we have communities that the roads aren't open, but we have airplanes. A Facebook invitation went out, I think on Thursday, said we're going to try and get 10 airplanes to go to Conroe on Saturday. And we ended up with 75 airplanes that first day. And we flew Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It was over Labor Day weekend, so we had a lot of people wanting to participate. Delivered probably around 300, 400,000 pounds that first weekend.
Wow.
And what's amazing about every one of these is they spool up so quickly, and we have so many ground and aviation asset volunteers who say, I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. And so Harvey was, while Doug was starting that, Robert Johnson, who you I think had on yesterday in another series, was flying in his 421, was flying MBAA and Salvation Army executives up and down the Texas coast.
Right.
And they were looking for places that we could go, what the damage was, et cetera. So it was 4 days of intense flying from Port Aransas all the way up to Orange, Texas. We had a lady call and say, hey, I have a place in Killeen, and it's the size of Walmart, and I can get all the supplies you need. So we started flying out of Killeen and Waco. So we had Dallas, Fort Worth, Killeen, and Waco, and we're just going in and out. And we were sitting over at DTO, Denton Airport, in a room with a whiteboard, Big Chief tablets, number 2 pencil, and 1 computer. And we started early in the morning, and we didn't go home until the last airplane was back home safe. And that was the genesis of the whole Operation Airdrop.
Yeah, I remember seeing that born and having Doug on talking about it shortly after all that. So then as it's gone forward, some events look like they're going to be a big deal and then end up being nothing. And then some think there's going to be nothing, end up being a big deal. How do you guys plan and prepare for all that?
So we're just going to have to look at the reports coming in and just kind of judge off the weather. It's very possible that we could mobilize and get there and realize that we're just not needed, turn around and go home.
Okay.
And, you know, there's years, one or two, from what I understand, that I wasn't involved, that, you know, they didn't even deploy at all.
Okay.
And there's a couple of years where they deployed a couple of times. So it's, you know, you just never know with weather. It's just a matter of what happens and what the event is, and, you know, whether or not there's communities that are cut off. And when the communities are cut off, we're ready to go. We can hop that water or, you know, that bridge and land and deliver the goods that they need, and, you know, get in, get out, and we're responsive and quick. We don't have all the red tape that the government entities do.
Right.
So, you know, within 24 hours of declaring the mission, you know, we're flying supplies in, and that's the goal, is to get the people in, because if, you know, you don't want people to go without food, water, and insulin, and, you know, other life-saving supplies that they absolutely have to have, you know, in situations like that. So that's our response. That's what we can do, and that's what we do.
Is that the big differentiator between you and the government, FEMA, and things like that, is the red tape? And speaking of red tape, you've got blue tape.
We'll talk about the blue tape in a second, but our goal is to be in as quickly as the wind quits blowing and find an airport. All we need is a couple of thousand feet to get in. Then we have to have somebody who's going to be our catcher. We always make sure that we have somebody who's trusted to catch our supplies to get them to the right place.
Okay.
Because we found that sometimes people show up and say, we're here to help you, and we don't know who they are. So we do not
What do you
release
mean
those
catcher?
supplies.
So when we fly into an airport to drop off the supplies, who do we give that to?
Right.
So we need to vet those folks to make sure that, you know, they're just not going to take it and go sell it or whatever.
right.
But, you know, they're going to get it to the people that need it.
People are trusting us to do
Yes.
the right thing. So we do that. And it doesn't take us very long. We have church groups, we have civic groups, we have government groups. And the difference between us is, all of us, is we're watching, like you said. We're looking for that storm, where it's going to go. And we're pretty good at that, but occasionally, you know how the weather goes. It goes this way, takes a left, goes
Yeah,
right.
right.
Doug and I flew down to Houston one day, right during COVID, we were still wearing masks. And we flew down to Conroe, and we were going to set up in Conroe because we thought we were going to be flying into Lake Charles in that area.
Right.
And the storm went that way, and it did not cause the damage and we stayed there for a day and we came home. So we don't deploy. When we started, we said we're not going to create missions. We're going to deploy, and we are going to complete missions, but we're not going to
when
create.
it can make an impact.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
So that's what we've done. Now, Hurricane Ida, I believe it was, in South Louisiana, that hit Houma, Louisiana, just destroyed Houma. We work with a group called Operation Barbecue Relief out of Joplin, Missouri, and they come in. I was telling him at lunch, they can set up enough kitchens to fill up 2 basketball courts.
Wow.
And they can serve up to 25,000 meals a day.
Wow.
And we were flying into Hammond, Louisiana, picking up 70-pound boxes of cooked food that we would fly down to Houma. It was taking them 5 hours to get down there. The shelf life of that food's 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
So we took off, we flew it down, and our partners, that at that time were Cajun Navy, now
Right.
Relief, they had the clamshells. They were serving it up. People would come pick it up. We'd fly the big containers back, and we did 2 meals a day. Robert and I went in his airplane. We were flying back and forth to Dallas. Everybody was flying to remote areas because we go in, we don't want to take hotel rooms that other people need. We don't want to take infrastructure that other people need. And so we'd fly back to Dallas, fly back the next day. We did that 4 days in a row.
Wow.
We delivered over 28,000 meals in 4 days. And we only had 5 airplanes because the need was there, but 5 airplanes could do it, and we did it.
Now, you talked a lot about airplanes. I recently got my commercial rotor add-on. So it seemed like in Helene in the Carolinas, helicopters came into a big play. Is that correct?
So what happened with that is Helene's such a different.
It was a different
It was
animal.
such a different animal. Because you get up there, yes, there were some airports that we could utilize, and we certainly did. We had somewhere between 175 and 200 fixed wing flying out of Concord that flew, you know, all day long, every day. But there was also a lot of places where the fixed wing couldn't access. And so Doug made a phone call to, a buddy and said, hey, do you think you can get some helicopters here? And he says, yeah, I think so. And, we were expecting, 5 or 6 helicopters to come in and help. within just a couple of days, it went to almost 135 helicopters. It was insane.
I've seen pictures. It's
and in the process of all that, Operation Hilo was born. And so now we've got a sister organization that basically runs the helicopters, and then we do the fixed wings.
Okay.
And then when the need arises, we'll come together.
So Operation Airdrop will just be fixed wing. Operation Hilo will be rotor.
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's good to know.
Will we have helicopters that fly for Operation Airdrop?
Sure.
Sure, absolutely.
When you have to coordinate stuff.
When we need to coordinate stuff, and it's not a mission that Hilo needs to be involved in or wants to be involved in, or whatever the situation. It's all so fluid.
Yeah.
Well, they're Hilo guys.
Yeah.
They have contacts in Houston and Corpus Christi, and petroleum helicopters out of Lafayette, Louisiana, is the biggest in the world. So they know who they can get. If we have their need down here, great. If they need us, if we're going to Florida, we're closer together.
Yeah.
Because as you know, flying a Hilo now, it is an expensive proposition.
It's expensive and slower and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But more versatile. Yeah.
But very versatile in the
it's all different
this
tools in
type
the
of
toolbox.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. What's the blue tape?
Well, I brought that as my only prop. I just wanted to stress how we prepare for a flight. And I was talking with a person here, flies a Cherokee. He can take 400 pounds. We weigh every item that's going to go onto an airplane. It's up to the pilot to know his weight and balance.
Okay.
We don't go do a weight and balance. They have to do it. But if we do a box of diapers and they weigh 7 pounds, it says 7 pounds. We put them on a pallet, and the pilot comes in and goes, how much can you carry? I can carry 400 pounds. We've got 380 pounds right here. Good. We take that right out to their airplane. So they don't have to sit there and worry about it. So we have people all day long.
Weighing.
Items are coming in. And I can tell you that a pallet of water weighs somewhere around 1,340 pounds.
Wow.
We had a turbine DC-3 come in and fly for us. We had a Casa flying out of, I believe, out of Hickory or Statesville. I had one gentleman calls me and said, I have an 18-wheeler full of canned water. Where do you want it?
Oh, wow.
It was amazing what people showed up with. I have 10 chainsaws. Where do you want them?
Wow.
We went out, and our contributions were great. One day I went out and bought 50 generators that we took out and had flown into different, what they call, it's fire districts up in the mountains. So they would have some power so people could come in and charge their cell phone, and Russ was helping with Doug and Robert, and they were flying Starlinks up into the mountains also in the Hilo group, correct?
Well, and Starlink, like Elon Musk group, like donated a lot of that
650 plus.
Wow. Right. It's amazing to see
and then,
people
and
coming
then, they opened that region. If you're at a Starlink, it just worked. There was no charge.
Wow.
So
one of the most amazing things about that impacts me, and I fly for Challenge Air also, and I've been on their board for years, is the volunteers that come out. Not just the pilots. I mean, we're the delivery end of that. We're the last mile, right? But every day I did ground ops at Concord at the airport. By the way, we broke their operations record 4 days in a row.
Wow.
We really did. But I had around 100 to 150 people every day working in that hangar, sorting, bringing in. I had an equal number, or greater number at the Walmart there in Concord, gave us a good third of their parking lot. And we started out with one little tent, and by the end of the 5th day, we had like 7 tents. We had a first aid tent. We had this and we had that. And you got to feed those people. So we were feeding them, but they just kept showing up. And at one point, we had to kind of say, slow down, because we're getting too much stuff. We had a trucking company that we hired, and they were moving stuff back and forth. And if we had too much going there, we sent some over to Hickory. If we had too much at Hickory, we sent it to Statesville. And Statesville wasn't part of our organization, but there was a great group of pilots flying over there, and Russ flew in and out of there.
I was flying in and out of there all day, every day.
And so it was, the volunteerism in this country is amazing. And I'm going to tell you, from being up in the mountains and being down at Harvey and all these others, you don't find these places and find the people who are impacted the most feeling sorry for themselves. The people who are impacted the most usually say, what can I do to help? And they have nothing.
Wow.
It really impacts you.
Yeah.
One big question I know that people have, and they saw news reports of this or that. Let's talk about safety for a minute in these environments, especially like Helene. You've got all these pilots, you're expecting 10 airplanes, now you have 75, all this kind of stuff. what do you do to help keep everything safe?
Sure.
So what I can tell you is that at Statesville, where I was flying in and out of, the pilots, and there was a lot of aircraft flying out there. There's good 125 airplanes operating all day long. So you've got a constant line trying to get out and a constant line trying to come in. The pilots did an amazing job of being where you expect them to be, which is huge, and communicating, with their position reports, because it was an uncontrolled field as well.
Okay.
And so,
was there any kind of temporary FAA tower or anything like that? Okay. No. They couldn't set up something like that. But so it's just all uncontrolled, but pilots communicating.
Well, in Concord, where we were flying out of, our base of operation was a towered airport.
Right.
Hickory was a towered airport, and later in on during the mission. At Hickory, anyway, I know that we were using airdrop. We had a unique squawk code for each of the aircraft that were flying, and the FAA kept track of what was going on that way. So I was airdrop 2013 Yankee, and then when I was flying into Hickory, I had to let them know that I was a Cessna, a Skyhawk.
Right.
A Skyhawk, because otherwise they would think I was a helicopter, because that's what primarily was operating in and out of that particular airport. So,
so there is method to the madness to keep everybody safe.
There is.
absolutely.
I know in Concord, in which airdrop, like I said, we still have a whiteboard, and that whiteboard says this plane's going there. And then we're tracking that also. And we list all of the airports that we know need the supplies. So we don't have a pilot come, I'm going to go over here for the heck of it. So we know where it needs to go, we know how it needs to get there, and we know that plane went, and then when they come back, we want to know that they're back.
Right.
So we still track them out and back. And now with Russ and his small team that he's going to have working with us, we're going to advance that quite a bit. We're getting away a little bit from the Big Chief tablet and number 2 pencil and moving into the 21st century.
Start using Flight Radar 24 and track.
We're going to use a lot of different
We'll
tools.
use a lot of technology to not only task out, but to dispatch and then recover the flights as they come in and debrief. And
Okay. For in an emergency, I'm guessing that at different phases of an event, you're going to have different needs. So let's take like the beginning of something like Helene. What is the greatest need for Operation Airdrop in the first 48 hours?
I'm going to start with Harvey, because
Okay,
that's where we started with, and Salvation Army came to us and said, here's what you need in an emergency. And they've been doing this for a long time.
That helped.
The first thing you need is baby formula.
Yeah.
Baby got to eat.
Okay.
All the rest of us can go for days without food.
Okay.
Not without water, but without food.
Yeah.
Second thing is diapers. Baby's going to eat.
Baby's going to puke.
Baby's going to go. So you do that. And then you start thinking about the sanitary supplies, just hand washing, things of that nature. Those are immediate.
What about water? You mentioned
Water's, we will carry water. Water weighs 8 pounds a gallon,
Yes,
as you know.
Right.
And so in many cases, we've worked with other organizations who have desalination equipment. And when Hurricane Ina hit in Florida, we flew in as airdrop on a caravan, desalination to an island that had no water.
Okay.
And so they were creating the water. We sent in like 16,000 1-gallon jugs, and they could create like 3,000 gallons a day. So when we can, yes, we want to get water in there as quickly as we possibly can, but we want to, and you got to have water for baby formula, right?
Right.
So then you start getting into, if it's raining, you have tarps. If you have this, you have that.
Right.
So it kind of morphs as we're going, and we customize it to each type of event.
Okay, so far as needs and supplies, that covers that, and that it's
Right.
going to change, it's going to be fluid.
Right.
If anybody wants to help in that regard, they could probably just keep an eye out on the Facebook or the website to
Right.
see what you guys
Yes.
need.
Right.
Now, what about manpower?
Well, we just talked about the airplanes, and Russ and I were talking over lunch. West Virginia, the most recent thing that happened, and Hilo, who's our partner, said, it's going to be trucking. We're not even using helos up there, right?
Right.
So they did a little bit, but they trucked it in. So people donating supplies are really huge, and we try and stay outside of the impact area So we're not impacting what is at that local store that people can buy. We want to get it from outside. When planes are coming in to our airport, if they have supplies and we know that there's a need, we will assign them to go to that airport before they ever touch down with us.
Okay.
So we can get started there. Then come to us, then they have an empty airplane to go back to different locations that we're going to have. But we start seeing, and again, it's the volunteerism of America. People will start showing up with anything and everything. That's why we put out that list. We don't need used clothes. We don't need this.
Right.
We don't need that. What we do need are these supplies, and we need them immediately to be done. And people will buy them, and they will ship them. And we have FedEx boxes show up. We have Amazon boxes show up, sometimes 2 days too late, but it's never too late to help people. Right. And so people start bringing that in. And like I said, that Walmart, I had to stop people. I had to slow people down. We had it on TV, slow down. Please stop for today. Come tomorrow and bring it tomorrow. And
But do you need pilots? Do you need planes?
Pilots and planes, obvious. Yeah,
Yes.
That's the most obvious thing. But we have a database now of
So that's not as big of
a
a need as it was maybe in the very beginning.
No. People know who we are. They know that we're going to deploy, and,
Okay.
and Russ and his team will do a much better job. Not that we didn't do a great job in the past. They'll do a much better job of being ahead of it, working with meteorologists around the country to identify and to prepare and be ready to go.
All right. So I was mentioning pilots. Is there what kind of manpower stuff do you need from non-pilots? Are there volunteers that can come and help be catchers or whatever? What kind of needs do you have in that regard?
Well, it's basically at the airport to be loading. And
Okay.
we'd love to have people who are aviation savvy there because, as you know, people who are not, they don't realize that propeller is spinning at 1,500 RPM when it starts up. They don't know airplanes. They don't know where to be, when to be. So if they're aviation savvy, and we try and have somebody who is with each crew, because we will haul the product out to the plane on the flight line and then load it and come back in. Just like at Challenge Air, we always make sure we have a sponsor on the field.
Okay.
Yeah, if you think about it, when the product hits the warehouse or the hangar that we're operating out of, it's got to be sorted, it's got to be weighed, and then when a tasking goes out, it's got to be picked and put on the pallet to be shipped out to the airport, pulled out to the airport on a pallet jack to be loaded.
To the plane, yeah.
And so if you look at the operation, it's kind of like an ant farm. I mean,
Okay.
you've just got people going everywhere, and you look at this, and it looks like chaos. But everybody's got their particular task, their particular item they're looking for, so they can grab that and go put it on the pallet. And we need folks to do that, right?
Okay.
And it's they just kind of show up. It's a lot of local folks that see what's happening. They see it on social media. They see it on they hear it on the radio. They see it on TV, and then they just come out and volunteer their time. And of course, we have a number of folks that have hit several of our, if not all of our deployments, to show up and help on the ground side as well. So it's not just pilots. We definitely need some folks at each event to fill those roles.
All right. So now between events, which is most of the time, what kind of needs do you have in between?
Money.
Money. Okay. Well, yeah.
I mean, it's when you think about it and you run one of these events and then you deplete your funds, you need to bring them back up and get ready for the next event. Obviously we want to expand our capability and our efficiency as well. So, I'm looking to spend some money on technology and
So you got to build that bank account. You got to
build that bank account. It's a nonprofit organization, but it's still a business, and business have bills, and it takes money to do what we do.
All right. And if people do want to donate right now, where would they go?
They go to operation-airdrop.com.
Okay, operation-airdrop.com. We'll put it up on the screen. Now, for those who might go, why should I donate to that? I mean, that's what my tax dollars do with FEMA, right? What would you say?
FEMA doesn't do what we do. What we do is we get in.
That was in the news in Helene, but we won't go there,
We
right?
get in, and we provide the immediate need.
So FEMA takes days to get there?
life-saving needs. Government entities, by the time they make the decision to do something, it takes them, a week to 10 days to spool up and get through all the processes that they have to go through.
The governor has to request it, and the federal has to do this.
Exactly.
They don't have the assets that we have.
And that's correct.
FEMA is an organization that's going to give money. We are going to deliver supplies immediately, and that's the difference. And like I said, when the wind stops blowing, I'm going to tell a real quick story here. Robert and I were down in Houma, Louisiana, and there was a guy named Alan from Alvin, Texas.
Okay.
He shows up with his pickup truck and his box trailer, and I said, and he was hauling product and food and everything. I said, "Why are you here?" He said, "Y'all were there for us after Harvey."
Oh, wow.
He spent 2 weeks living in his truck, hauling food, fixing his own flats every day. And that's what we see at these events. But people started, what people need to know about Airdrop is once local commerce can take over, the roads are open, people can go to Walmart and buy these products. We pack up, we go home. Now, with Helene, we had such a great response. We were able to do things to be able to provide supplies and actually work with Hilo after we were gone to continue to provide things there. So that was, as I said,
unusual, yeah.
Lightning in a bottle, once in a lifetime, we hope, situation that we have to deal with. But each one of them is going to be different. And so Russ and his team, one of their primary objectives is to really work between here and the whole southeastern United States to create teams and partnerships. So we have that immediate response, and we know who's they're going to contact, and we know what airports we can get into, and we know whether it's controlled or not controlled, et cetera, et cetera. And Hilo was really good for us because they were able to go into areas with their helicopters and validate this runway's open. This one's not.
Right.
So it was really, really valuable to us as an organization in their partnership.
Wow. Hurricanes, are they the only thing that you guys respond to?
I would say no, but primarily in the past, that's what it's been for sure.
Okay.
We're looking
that's
at
where the
other
needs.
options.
We are looking at expanding,
Okay.
but more to come on that.
Okay, very good. Any last things you might want to add that we haven't talked about?
No, thank you again for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a pleasure to see you again. And the first time I ever had to do makeup to be on camera.
We didn't do that back in season 2?
I don't think you did. That was season number 2. And
Yeah.
I think you kind of looked at us and said, that'll go. But,
well, good enough.
the aviation community is very small, but we get a lot of good press. And Robert and I were flying the food for our operation, and that's all we flew was food in that one mission. That's all we flew, basically. And we would go to barbecue relief, and people were hugging us and kissing us and crying and saying, "You guys are heroes." And we were just like, "No, we're truck drivers in the air. You guys are heroes. You've been there.
Right.
You're going to be there for 2 weeks cooking food. We're there for 4 days, and when you can truck it, you truck it." So you go home, and if you don't feel like you've done something at the end of one of these missions, then you hadn't participated in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
sharing
Great seeing you again.
about- Yeah, good seeing you. All right, and thank you guys for watching. And if you can help out, go to operation-airdrop.com and see what you can do to help, whether it's financial or get yourself ready to volunteer for your plane, or if you don't have a plane or pilot certificate, you can certainly help in other ways, as we've learned. Also, thanks to our sponsors who help get this word out, like Marshall Protective Services, MPSprotects.com, Flying Eyes Optics.com, where using our discount code, taking off all caps one word, will get you 10% off, ClemensInsurance.net, ZVision, XEVision.com, and 67 Designs, 67D.com. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you next time in the hangar.